In this video, we'll be looking at microblogging. My name is Mark Pegram, and I'll be taking you through this material. And here's the usual copyright notice that you see at the start of all of the online videos. Over the years, there have been a number of different microblogging services around. But as with Facebook in the area of social networking, what we've seen happen in this area is that one service has become absolutely dominant. I'm talking, of course, about Twitter. It really doesn't have much competition in most of the world. The one exception is China, where Twitter is not accessible, and a local microblogging platform, Weibo, has become incredibly popular. Because Twitter is so dominant internationally, most of our discussion of microblogging will focus on Twitter. For those of you who've heard that Twitter is mostly used to talk about what people have had for breakfast, I suggest that you pause this video now and go and have a look at the YouTube video at the address you can see at the bottom of the screen. This was released in 2011 by Twitter to celebrate their 5th anniversary. And so, of course, it's very pro-Twitter, but it does give you a good idea of the many uses of Twitter and the many people, including extremely well-known people, who are making good use of it. Interestingly, another 5 years on, in 2016, Twitter released this billboard campaign to demonstrate how it helps people to engage with the important issues in the world today. You might like to pause the video and have a closer look. The best way to find references on particular topics on Twitter is to search by hashtags. If you type #refugees into the search box, you'll find references to that topic. If you type in #climate change, you'll find references to that topic. Increasingly, it's important for all of us to add appropriate hashtags to our own tweets so that others can find them. But beyond searching for information in this way, most people choose to follow those who often post material that is of interest and relevance to them. Many educators make good use of Twitter. This is a data visualization of the main topics covered in my Twitter feed, which is all about new technologies in education. This is a screen capture of my Twitter feed from mid-2017. You can see the kinds of tweets that I post. As I've said, the main focus is new technologies in education. Of course, when I log into Twitter, I don't only see my own tweets. I also see the tweets from those that I follow. That is, the academics and educators, the scientists and technologists, and the journalists who keep me up to date. Howard Rheingold makes the point here that to use Twitter effectively, you have to do two very important things. First of all, you have to tune the network of people you follow. In other words, you have to make good choices about whom to follow. You want to follow enough people that you get the broad picture that you're interested in, but not so many people that you're overwhelmed. Secondly, you have to feed the network of people who follow you. In other words, you have to put out information semi-regularly that is going to be of real interest to your followers and potential followers. And as you build up a group of followers over time, you'll find that you're able to interact with them, converse with them, exchange ideas, and this is where Twitter can become a very rich and a very powerful platform. Howard Rheingold has been writing about new technologies, including new technologies in education, for a very long time, as you can see from the titles of his books listed on this slide. You might like to check out his website or follow him on Twitter. You can also look up his Wikipedia entry for a general overview of his work. His latest book, NetSmart, which you also saw listed on the previous slide, is well worth checking out if you'd like some deeper insights into the nature of online networking and the potential benefits it can bring. Here's a quote from a recent study of teachers' use of Twitter. This study finds that it was a great tool for continuing professional development and professional growth for the teachers. I'm now going to present you with a series of quotes from a 2011 study, as well as from the 2016 study from which you've just seen a quote. These are all quotes by teachers talking about how they make use of Twitter. Feel free to pause the video as often as you wish to read these teachers' comments. So far, we've largely been talking about Twitter as a professional development platform for teachers, a place to continue your lifelong learning. But Twitter can also be used in the classroom. Here are a couple of suggestions from the 2009 Horizon Report. So as you can see here, microblogging, and of course Twitter in particular, can be used to continue a conversation outside of classroom walls. In other words, it's a way of extending the classroom, of getting students to continue to be involved with the learning material, with the teacher, and with each other in the evenings, on weekends, even on holidays or breaks. Twitter is also a good way to deal with organizational matters. For example, as this quote says, to update students on course logistics. There are, in fact, many ways that Twitter can be used in the classroom. If students have access to desktop or laptop computers or perhaps mobile devices, it's possible to get them to go to Twitter, to use a hashtag with a particular set of letters or numbers which will be recognizable to everyone in the class, and pose their questions or make their comments about a particular topic, about a presentation, or about anything else that you can think of. It's possible to have these questions and comments displayed in real time on a screen at the front of the room. You can use the standard linear Twitter format, or you can use one of a variety of services which display these postings, these tweets, in interesting ways. One of those services, which has been very popular in recent years, is called Visible Tweets. You might like to pause this video now and go and have a look at Visible Tweets. It's set up to pull in comments, in other words, tweets from Twitter on the subject of leadership. But actually you can put in any subject, and if you were doing this with a class, you would set up a hashtag for them, and that way you'd be able to pull together all of the comments, all of the questions, all of the responses made by people in a particular group. Let's have a look at a few examples of Twitter use. Easy Tweets is a service designed for language learners who are able to pull together tweets at different levels of language difficulty on topics they're interested in. It's available in both web-based and app formats. This is a blog maintained by a Hong Kong teacher that I worked with a few years ago. He's talking about his use of Twitter with a class of primary students. Each day, he gets them to write down what they've learned. This obliges them to reflect on what they've done that day, but it's also a literacy exercise because they need to express themselves very succinctly. More than this, it's a way of inviting the parents and guardians of the children into the educational process because they can read what the children have been up to each day and ask them questions about it. So it's a way of extending the classroom beyond the four walls of the room itself. The font is a little bit hard to read, so I'm going to blow it up to a larger size. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to read closely what Matt has to say, including the comment from a parent that he has added in. At the other end of the literacy scale, as Clive Thompson indicates here, status update tools like Twitter have produced a renaissance, he says, in witty, aphoristic, haiku-like expression. So there is an interesting literacy angle to consider with services like Twitter. Beyond this, Twitter can also be used as a platform to foster interaction. Here are 3 ideas. Students could write a collaborative story, with each student adding one new short sentence to what the previous students have said. Or students could use Twitter as the basis for pen pal relationships with a class or classes of students in another country or countries. Students could also follow and interact with celebrities. Many teachers ask their students to follow literary figures whose work they are studying in the class, for example. Perhaps because Twitter gets such a bad rap in the media, many educators have taken the time to write down lists of useful things that you can do with Twitter in the classroom. You can see several references on this slide. If you're interested, you might like to pause the video and go and have a look at one or more of these lists. You'll find lots of great ideas there on how to make effective educational use of Twitter. And finally, here's an example of a Twitter feed incorporated into an e-portfolio by a pre-service teacher. In her text, she explains how Twitter and other online resources form part of her personal learning network. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to read what she has to say. When it comes to variations on the basic idea of microblogging, there are a couple of very interesting services I'd like to point out. Paper.li creates a daily digest from your Twitter account. So it's presented, as you can see, in the format of a newspaper or a magazine. It means you don't have to go into Twitter itself. You can just read the digest at the end of each day. And you could imagine doing an exercise with students where they follow experts on particular topics and where they get a tailored newspaper covering those topics produced day by day. Scoop.it is a service which recently has become very popular with educators. It's a freemium service, which means you get a basic level of functionality for free, but you need to pay an annual fee for more advanced functionality. In many ways, it's like a cross between Twitter and a folksonomy service. When I find useful material about mobile learning, I post it here in my Ubiquitous Learning Scoop.it feed, but it's also cross-posted to Twitter. On Scoop.it, the material is presented in a magazine-like format. In this way, those who follow me on Scoop.it can see the material I've curated here, but those who follow me on Twitter can also see the same material in a slightly different format. Many teachers are using Scoop.it to curate material for their students, and it's also possible to have students curate their own materials in this kind of magazine-like format. Another advantage of Scoop.it is that it's very easy to embed a Scoop.it widget within a web page, blog, or wiki. So here you can see my Ubiquitous Learning Scoop.it feed embedded in the mobile learning page of the digital learning website. Here's an example of a Scoop.it feed which was set up by a teacher I worked with in Singapore who was teaching a course on the topic of arts management. You might like to pause the video and have a close look at the annotations she has superimposed on this screen capture of her Scoop.it account. Here you can see some of the material she has curated for her students. And here is some explanation of why she has chosen particular types of articles. How about the dangers and the risks of microblogging then? One obvious danger is that it's possible to get distracted by lots of incoming information and communication. Linda Stone has coined the term continuous partial attention to suggest that nowadays we rarely pay full attention to anyone or anything. Rather, we pay continuous partial attention to a whole range of information and communication channels. This is an issue not just with microblogging, but across the web and especially with Web 2.0. And if you've looked at some of the other videos provided, you might have come across this term before. Of course, this phenomenon of continuous partial attention has some important consequences and potentially some very negative ones for many areas of our lives, ranging from personal relationships through to reflective academic thought. This is Linda Stone. She comes from a technology background. She's held some pretty high-powered positions with Apple as a senior researcher and also as a vice president of Microsoft. She is not against technology, but she is arguing that we need to use technology in a balanced way. She's best known for her theory of continuous partial attention, but she does a lot of work in this general space. You might like to take a look at her Wikipedia entry, to look up her website, or to follow her on Twitter. If you'd like to hear an introduction to Linda Stone's concept of continuous partial attention in her own words, pause this video and go to the video that you see at the link at the bottom of the screen. The first half of this short video is all about continuous partial attention. In the end, what's important is not getting too distracted by the need to seek information or communicate information with others, as is pointed out in this fairly clever sign. So, pulling all of this together, we can say that microblogging is good for rapid multi-directional communication, it's great for keeping up to date, it's great for spreading information quickly, and it can allow you to extend the classroom as well as to have certain kinds of back-channel conversation. In that sense, it's a little bit like a chat service. It provides a variety of writing practice, including interaction with other writers, and we saw some examples of that with collaborative story writing or the idea of having pen pals in different countries. On the downside, there's the issue of continuous partial attention and the distraction that goes with that, as well as, of course, the danger of fragmentation of expression and understanding, which comes from having to express yourself in a limited number of characters. But then again, as we saw in the case of the primary teacher in Hong Kong, that can also be an advantage since it involves people in learning to be concise. If you'd like to read a summary of the main points we've made about microblogging, as well as accessing some links to relevant services and some additional references, you could go to the microblogging page of the Digital Learning website. You'll find it at the link at the bottom of the screen.